class, lecture number 13. We are halfway through this course here. Time is moving very, very fast, it seems like. Well, maybe it doesn't seem like that. So anyway, you will be in March as we are listening to this lecture. But the last time we were together, let's have a little refresher here. We talked about the 1924 presidential election. Calvin Coolidge was reelected as president. And in the 1920s, Silent Cal, by the way. And by the way, Silent Cal vowed to be the least president that this country would ever have. We're going to see some things to change very quickly here. All right, and we talked about the 1928 presidential election. Calvin Coolidge sent out a message to all of the reporters here at a press conference, said, "I do not choose to run for re-election as president in 1928. And of course, the Republican Herbert Hoover, a very, very intelligent individual, will be elected president. But unfortunately for Herbert Hoover, we have some bad situations that are on the horizon. And you know what I'm talking about with this. On the 29th of October 1929, a day that we refer to as Black Tuesday, you know what happened in the stock market crash. All right, and it will not recover for another 10 years here. This brings about the Great Depression. Somewhere through here, we talked about the Dust Bowl, the black blizzards. You know, I did not bear witness to that because I was not living during that period of time here, folks, but I've heard people talk about it. And associated with that was John Steinbeck's 1939 book, The Grapes of Wrath, one of the best books I've ever read, to repeat myself anyway. And we also mentioned about the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. This is with the rise of communism in the United States of America, with the Communist Party USA headquartered out of Chicago. All right, and as a result of the Spanish Civil War, and the government at that time in Spain was influenced very strongly by Russian communists, but we had about 3,000 young Americans that were communists, that were Marxists, that actually went to Spain to fight on the side of the government. They fought on the losing side, by the way, too, because it was actually the Phalangists, the nationalists, that won that war. And where your test question will come from, what is the name of that brigade that went to Spain to fight for the communists? And it is the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Technically, it's also known as the International Brigade. We also talked about that unfortunate event that took place in an election year in 1932 when 20,000 World War I veterans actually marched upon Washington demanding their bonus money. We refer to that as a bonus march. All right, and I kind of beat that horse to death there, folks. We won't go back through that, but it was an embarrassment to the Hoover administration, and we know who's going to be leaving the White House in 1932. And actually 1933, the presidential election took place in November of 1932. And of course, elected in 1932, will be inaugurated on the 4th of March in 1933 with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our 32nd president of the United States. And we began that section there the other day. I told you he served for 12 years, 4 terms, longer than any other president. It's not going to happen again here, folks. We have a constitutional amendment that prohibits the president from serving more than 2 terms today anyway. And whereas Calvin Coolidge vowed to be the least president that this country ever had, FDR is going to be the most president that the country ever had. All right, we're going to see many of the liberal reforms and liberal ideals that are envisioned today are going to be generated out of the terms here of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It's going to completely change the way in which the government and the people are related to each other. It's going to also create our modern liberal welfare system that we have today, where some people, instead of taking care of themselves, they look to the government to take care of them. Alrighty, so I want to share a couple of things with you, kind of tie some things up from the last time we were together here, folks. And I mentioned to you about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He had polio, and it was crippling polio. He was able to move about somewhat, but he almost always required assistance. And I ran across this photograph here, and this is on the campaign trail 1932. And if you look in the center here at the back of the train, if I can get my finger position right here, here's the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt here. Look carefully, and you can see his son, James. James, of course, has his arm linked with the president. And, of course, Roosevelt is not president at that time, but he will be elected president. But that's where you'll typically find it there. You'll always have the president interlocking arms with somebody else. Here's the president's, if I can get my finger position right, here's my president's wife here. This is Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a distant cousin, as I told you the other day. It was not a very strong marriage here. Well, I can tell you right now that FDR was not very faithful to her. Wonderful lady, by the way. And I just happened to look down here, and you can see the cane that the president-to-be anyway, is carrying in his right hand there. So anyway, all right, I also want to share something else with you, and this is a story And I probably don't have time to go into this, but it's an interesting story here, and it involves my grandmother. My grandmother was born in 1899. If she was still living today, or very shortly anyway, she would be 102 years of age. Wonderful woman, and I miss her very, very much. She died at the age of 91. She was an excellent cook, but she lived in Birmingham. And when I was a little boy, I would always visit her on the weekends, or maybe in the summer, go over and visit with her for a week or so. And she lived in an area which is called Norwood, and kind of a dangerous area today, but at that time, you didn't even have to lock your doors. Honest to goodness, you did not have to lock your doors. And I can remember having some concern why we would never lock the front door of the house even through the night. But like I said, she was a kindly old lady, and she would tell me stories about the Depression. And I would beg her to tell me stories. And she would tell me about she would be back in the kitchen preparing something, and there would be a knock at the door. And she would go to the door and look out, and there would be some hobo, some bum that would be outside. And she would say, what can I do for you, through the screen door? And the man would say, madam, do you have anything to eat? And she would say, well, you just sit down on the steps there and let me see what I can find. And she would always go back and get a scrambled egg sandwich. She would make a scrambled egg sandwich, which she did all the time, and then bring it out to the bum, bring it out to the hobo, and he would eat it and thank her, and he would leave. And it wouldn't be 5 minutes later, there would be another knock on the door. She would go to the front door. It'd be a different bum, different hobo, and it would be the same scenario, which he would say, ma'am, do you have something to eat? And she would prepare him the scrambled egg sandwich and bring it out to him, and he would be very grateful for it, and he would leave, and it wouldn't be 5 more minutes, and you know the rest of the story. And there would be another knock on the door. So she got wise to this, and she went outside. She was looking around, and she saw scrawled in chalk on the sidewalk in front of her house, there was a symbol. And so she got some water or whatever, a rag, and wiped that symbol away. And when she did so, nobody came by her house for several days. And then 3 or 4 days later, knock on the door, and she would go to the front door. There'd be another bum. She'd prepare the scrambled egg sandwich, go outside, and there would be the symbol scrawled back on the sidewalk. So what I'm trying to tell you about here, folks, we had hobo signs during those times, hobo signs. And I'm taking the liberty here to identify a few of these for you. I can't read this. It's too far away from me anyway. But these were all symbols that these hobos would place like on a sidewalk or wherever, indicating get a free meal here. If you talk about God and Jesus, you'll get a free meal here. Don't stop at this house. If you stop at this house, the dogs will bite you. But anyway, and I found that to be kind of interesting there with the hobos and the hobo sign. So let's go back to our document camera and get started into our lecture today here, folks. And immediately, I'm talking about immediately when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was inaugurated, we're going to start his first 100 days with a number of New Deal programs. Now, my friends, there's no easy way to do this. I recommend that you abbreviate, and that's the way I do this. I use the abbreviations. You need to be responsible, aware of what the abbreviation stands for. You'll catch on in just a few seconds. We don't have a whole lot of people that lived in the Depression are still with us today, but I'll tell you, good folks, if you talk to somebody from the Depression, they will refer to this as like alphabet soup, and it's the language of their own when they mention things like the EBA, the EA, the TVA, the PWA, the CWA, the CCC, and you need to get close with this. I want you to do this now. All right, so immediately when Roosevelt was elected president, we're going to start the Emergency Banking Act, the EBA, which will close all banks for 3 days, referred to as a bank holiday. We're just going to get by without having banks. This was like, let's just step back and take a breath of deep air and just kind of recover for a little bit here. All righty, for banks to reopen, they had closed banks to be open. They had to be inspected by the Treasury Department. Roosevelt at that time told the public, he said, I can assure you that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress. And sure enough, in 3 days, 75% of the banks and the Federal Reserve System will reopen. $1 billion of hoarded currency and gold will flow back into the banks within a month. And that's the way FDR was. He inspired confidence in individuals here. On the other hand, we still have many people today that are very afraid of depositing money in banks. And I can understand that, quite frankly, here, folks. All right, following this, we're going to have the EA, which is the Economy Act, which will cut salaries of government employees and reduce pensions to veterans by 15%. And that's just the proper thing to do here, my friends. If we have 50% of the country, or at least 20% of the country that is unemployed, and we have federal employees that are still drawing full salaries, that's just not fair. So we need to reduce the salaries of these government officials, reduce the amounts of pensions there, and take that money that's saved from that and put it towards some of these relief programs. All right, so anyway, and another thing that FDR is going to do here, folks, FDR is going to legalize this. It doesn't take a constitutional amendment to do this at this point anyway. Will legalize 3.2% beer. This is like a very light beer here, folks. And he did this, with the stroke of a pen here. All right, I apologize. My telephone is ringing right now, and I'm just going to have to let that go here, folks. All right, let's go back to my camera here. Let me show you a poster from that sign here, and we can see here beer. We have it at Henderson 8030 right there. And for many of these breweries, the breweries during the times in which we did have prohibition, the breweries would actually manufacture soft drinks or chewing gum, candy products, things such as that. And then they were just waiting for the day in which they could just load their beer up and just deliver it out for public consumption there too. And sure enough, what we're going to find also is that the 21st Amendment to the United States Constitution will repeal the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution. The noble experiment was a failure here, folks. All righty here. So, Happy Days are here again, and one of the popular songs of that period of time. All right, moving right along here now, let's get into many others of these New Deal programs. You are responsible for these here, folks. Once again, I recommend that you use the abbreviations for these. It's a lot easier to do that than write out the word here. And that's acceptable as long as you know what the abbreviation stands for. All right, this is all during the first 100 days. Congress passed and the President approved the Agricultural Adjustment Act, creates the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. It's easier just to refer to it as AAA, and it will regulate 7 farm products. This will include wheat, cotton, corn, hogs, rice, tobacco, and dairy products here. And what farmers are forced to do is to reduce their production, reduce the amount of wheat that they grow, cotton, corn, etc. with that. All of this is in an effort to keep farm prices low, and if farm prices stay low, then profits will be higher with that. And that's difficult for farmers to accept this, folks. In other words, what the government's going to tell you to do, instead of growing 100 acres of cotton, you grow 10 acres of cotton. Would you trust the government? I don't think so, and I wouldn't trust the government with that. So we had some real problems with this. Now, what the government had to do to make up for the loss, and I didn't write this word out here, my friends, but the government had to pay farmers a subsidy, give them a subsidy for not growing crops, Would you believe the government if they tell you that if you grow only 10 acres of cotton, the government will provide you with a subsidy? And for many farmers, they were quite fearful from this. On the other hand, we're going to have some widespread abuses with this. For cotton farmers plowed up, if you will, 10 million acres of harvestable cotton there for $100 million. That's $10 an acre here. We had for pig farmers, we had those that raised sow and pigs here. We had 6 million baby pigs and 200,000 pregnant sows that were slaughtered. And a hungry United States of America here, folks. Seems like we could have had better control of this. I don't know if I wrote it down here for you folks here, but AAA was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1936. All right. The problem in our country at this time was not inflation. The problem was deflation. the dollar was not worth anything. All right, so, and we'll see things change in later years with that. All right, moving right along here, another program that we had, a popular program, I'll just get this down here so we can read all of this. Popular program for that period of time was one which was called the National Industrial Recovery Act, which created the National Industrial Administration, commonly referred to as the NRA. All right, now I want you to recognize this. It was a popular program at this time, created in 1933. It called for a blanket code to include a minimum wage of 30 to 40 cents an hour. Would any of you like to work for me for that amount? I'll keep you gainfully employed 365 days a year. A maximum work week of 35 to 40 hours. And we also had the abolition of child labor. It was viewed as a new beginning between workers and industry. It was actually dominated too strongly by industry here, and it was not be very, very successful. It used the Blue Eagle as its emblem. We do our part was the motto to it. All right, if we look at this article here, you can see the article says the bird did its part here. The NRA, if I can get the lighting adjusted properly here, folks, and the NRA, notice the Blue Eagle there, and we see the emblem there. We do our part. Let's see if I have some other likenesses here about the NRA, and let's see if I can get this to slide under the camera here. This is not blue, of course, but we can see we do our part, the NRA, with the Blue Eagle. Let's see here. Here's another little likeness of that period of time, showing you workers, Uncle Sam, labor leaders. Here are, I should say, industrial leaders there, all supporting the NRA. Now, if you really want to be a true American here and support the country, ladies, I'm talking to you good folks now, but if you really want to support the country, here's what's fashionable here in 1933. And which you will go out to the beaches there and then take a template and put this over your backs, such as this, and then let the sun tan you. And what we end up with is these ladies have this NRA tanning, or it looks like a tattoo, which is on your back. I think that's true patriotism. Any of you folks like to do that? And if you're following in your textbook here, and I'm talking about page 666, the sign of the devil, 666. And here we can look on that page there, and we can see a group of 8,000 students. This is at the San Francisco Seal Stadium. This is before we had the San Francisco Giants anyway. And you can see all these 8,000 students that have assembled themselves out in the infield and outfield in a Blue Eagle fashion right there. We do our part. How do I know that this photograph was taken after 1932? How do I know that? Look in the outfield on the wall there. It tells you Rainier beer. So up until that time, beer was illegal. All right. And anyway, that's in the United States. So that is the NRA. The NRA, did I write it down for you? And I did not do this. The NRA was ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1936. And there it is, right in front of my very eyes. Okay, so let's move on with another New Deal program. And we also have the PWA. The Public Works Administration, hugely popular at that time, and this is in the early parts of the New Deal program, Roosevelt's first time in office there. And before I go any further here, folks, I don't want to completely leave the NRA. For those of you that don't have anything else to do with your hard-earned money, you can buy little buttons like this. You're an NRA member here. We do our part here. All right, so moving right along here, folks, let's get back to the PWA. And for the PWA, it provided work for 4 million people. 400,000 projects, if you will pay you $15 a week. $15 a week. Now, most of these projects would include things like drainage, ditches, roads, sidewalks, if you will, small construction projects. Most were small projects here. But on the other hand, we had some large projects that were associated with the PWA. Grand Coulee Dam was one of those. You can look for it in your textbook. Bonneville Dam. Bonneville Dam, which is located in Oregon, if you will. Boulder Dam, which is in right outside of Las Vegas. Today we refer to Boulder Dam as Hoover Dam, by the way, but at that time it was called Boulder Dam. And can you imagine if you were fortunate enough to get one of these dam jobs? And I mean that, get one of these jobs working on a dam. So if it takes you 10 years to construct Boulder Dam, you got a job for 10 years. So that is a benefit, very much so. The 100-mile causeway from down around Key Largo, south of Miami, all the way down to Key West, that was a PWA project here, folks. You owe it to yourself once in a lifetime to make that 100-mile drive and drive from Key Largo down to Key West. I love Key West, wish I was there right now, as a matter of fact. It's painfully slow on that causeway there. The speed limit's about 45 miles per hour, so you can imagine going 100 miles, 45 miles per hour. It just takes you an eternity. But do it once in your lifetime. Do it once in your lifetime. And from that point on here, folks, take the flight into Orlando and then a direct flight into Key West. Beautiful place to visit. Wish I was on Duval Street as we are speaking right now. Okay, back we go here, folks, and let's see what other programs we have here. And the TVA. The TVA, that was another interesting project. The Tennessee Valley Authority. Some of you may know people that work there. My sister worked with TVA for a while. And here's a likeness here showing you what this is supposed to be here, folks. This is a dam. This is a dam. We see the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. It would provide work for many, many individuals, but not only that, it would provide recreational areas. And we could also use this to generate electricity. That would bring electricity to the Tennessee Valley, which in many cases was deprived of that. There are many of these dams here. You can see them all on 667, page 667 in your textbook there. We had Wilson Dam. This was the first. Wilson Dam was the first of the TVA projects there, named, of course, for Woodrow Wilson. It's located in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I saw it last week. It's still closed. It's been closed for about 10 months here, folks. There's no traffic on it. It should reopen pretty soon. Some of you probably have been across Wilson Dam. It goes from Florence over to Muscle Shoals. And a very narrow, kind of scary too. I drive across it. Wheeler Dam, I was there last week, as a matter of fact. I actually drove across Wheeler Dam. We have Pickwick Dam, Gunnersville Dam, and if you're looking on page 667, you can see a jillion other dams that were a part of that, all the way up into Tennessee, to Fontana Dam and elsewhere. Okay, so FDR also was in favor of moving off the gold standard. By moving off the gold standard in 1933, we went to government-managed money. I don't know if I feel very confident about that here, folks, but that is what we did, and that is where we are today. We are not on a gold standard or a silver standard, even to this day. And let's see what else in the New Deal. And in 1933, the government established, part of the New Deal, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. If you still go to banks today, you probably see the FDIC label and notice that's there at the teller station there. This would guarantee bank deposits at that time for $2,500. So just for a second on that here, folks, $2,500, that means if you have a bank account that has $2,000 in it and that bank closes, the government will give you your $2,500. If you have $2,500, it will give you $2,500. If you have $3,000, it will only guarantee it for $2,500. Later, that amount was raised to $5,000. When I checked on it recently here, folks, if you don't have an interest-bearing account, it is now $250,000. If you have an account that draws interest, it is guaranteed for an indefinite amount. If you have $1 million, the government will guarantee it for $1 million. Okay, so anyway, that's the FDIC. That certainly is going to and improve depositors making their contributions, holdings available to the bank. All right, on we go here, folks. Hey, another one here is the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. All along, you thought the SEC was something else. You were wrong. SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission, which would police the stock market like it should be done. All right, moving on here. We have the FIRA. Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which will provide grants and assistance to bankrupt state relief agencies. If Alabama's relief agencies runs out of money, then FERA will provide federal funding to support them. All right, another interesting aspect of that. And we must move right along here, folks. Still quite a bit to talk about with this. And let's see, I'm looking around for some things here that I might have omitted. And I don't see that, so we're doing fairly well with this. Okay, shall we continue with this? All right, we also had the Civil Works Administration, the CWA. Very similar to that of the PWA. Small-scale temporary projects, roads, hospitals, maybe libraries a part of this, sidewalks, drainage ditches. Provided work to 4 million workers, $15 a week, referred to as pump priming. And what the government is trying to do here, folks, is get money into circulation. That's what they want. If they pay you $15 a week, don't save the money. We want you to spend the money and get this prime pumping going again in the economy. Get money circulating. That is what they're attempting to do with this. All right, so shall we move on here, folks? And another one, and this was FDR's most famous and most popular New Deal project, and it was called the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, and it provided millions of jobs for young men, high school, college age here. It wasn't always this way, but most of the time they were working in national parks, working in national forests there. These construction projects are taking place in those locations here. Some of you probably are familiar with the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail was a CCC project. And we also had CCC projects here. And, well, I know there was one north of Walker County, a CCC camp, as a matter of fact, that was up in the Bankhead National Forest, but I'm going to leave that to you to find the old ruins to that camp, and you can. Very military oriented. Here we can see some young men here. And notice they are white guys, and they're working here. It's common labor, if you will, here, my friends here, but dressed in the pants, the trousers that are military style, the headgear, the hat, military style, and they've all taken their shirts off because it is a warm day with that. We also had segregated CCC camps. You had CCC camps for blacks, CCC camps for guys, for boys, young men, if you will. Women were not involved in the CCC. It was a prejudice in a way because the CCC workers that were white were paid more than that of blacks. They were not integrated. These were segregated, separate CCC camps. All right, so anyway, I want you to remember that with the CCC. Interesting organization. I brought something out for you folks here. This is a hat. That was a CCC hat. I'm not going to put it on, have you laugh at me, folks, but you can see the emblem up there, oops, if I can get this right, here, the CCC there. And I'll say again, for those of you that don't have anything else to do with your hard-earned money here, folks, you can go on eBay and buy this junk here. I like to do that. I don't know why I ever use it outside the classroom, but anyway, I like to do that. Okay, so need to recognize here the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. In these camps, by the way, they had yearbooks, just like your high school yearbook, and those are fun to look through. I wish I had one. If any of you have from your grandfather's, great-grandfather's, old CCC yearbook, and you don't want that, I wish you'd kindly donate it to Bevel State. We would appreciate that very, very much. Okay, so back we go here, and let's see what else we have. Okay, so FDR was enormously popular during his first 2 years in office. But after the first 2 years in office, this country, we were still in a depression, and it looks like we're not going anyplace with that. So FDR's popularity began to slide. It began to go down. And you can imagine where the criticism is going to come from. That criticism, of course, is going to come from the Republican side, from the conservative side, and here we go, from the right, if you will. And for many of the Republicans at that time, they felt like this was the New Deal was a reckless spending, economic crackpots, socialist reforms. You know what I'm I'm talking about with that. I'll share with you some of the political cartoons from that period of time. And if you look carefully at this, we see down in the pit there, this is the National Economic Truck. And you can see the Democrats up there at the top there, the Democratic Recovery Efforts. And if we look over to the other side here, we can see the Republican from the Grand Old Party. He's going about it in all the wrong ways. He's using artificial devices. And then the public responding here, by the way, aren't you the fellow who was driving it when it went into this hole? All right, so anyway, that's the kind of response we get with that. And if you can't say anything better about somebody, just accuse them of being a communist. This is the best that the Republicans had to offer here. Back to 1929. Roosevelt is red. Roosevelt is a communist. All right, so we had several members here in the public that were prominent foes, if you will, of FDR and the New Deal. One of these individuals is Dr. Francis Townsend. Dr. Francis Townsend, he was out of California, by the way, and he was openly critical of the president. And let me see if I can find a likeness of him here. All right, right in the bottom here. Right here we see Dr. Francis Townsend, and a physician, by the way, too. But he advocated the Townsend Plan. And I want you to listen to this now. The Townsend Plan. For every individual that is 60 years of age, if you're willing to retire, you can retire, and the government will give you $200 per month. $200 per month. Sounds pretty good if you ask me. What this does, this takes the old guy off the job, makes the job available to a younger individual, and then the older guy gets $200 a month. But under the Townsend Plan here, folks, what it required you, if you were a recipient of the Townsend money there, the $200, you had to spend that $200 every month. You could not save it. You had to spend that $200. And that's where the hitch was. How do you determine whether somebody has spent the money or whether somebody has hoarded the money there? All right, so the Townsend Plan would never go into effect here, but I'm telling you, my friends here, it will plant the seed that's going to germinate into something else in about one more year. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's Social Security. Social Security. All right, so that will happen, but that's not going to happen during this lecture. We're going to wait until our next lecture. All right, FDR also had another political enemy, and this individual was Dr. Charles Coughlin. You can see how to spell his name there, Charles Coughlin. And he was a Catholic priest from Mount Holyoke, Michigan, I believe it was anyway. Let's see if I can find a likeness of him right here. And this is the best I can do. Here's Father Charles Coughlin there. Had a huge radio listening audience here. Royal Oak, Michigan was the place in which he was from here. He recommended, did I write this down? And I did not. He recommended going on the silver, I did too, going on the silver standard and actually going back to the old greenbacks. Wow, that seems kind of antiquated if you would ask me anyway. But nevertheless, he had a heavy following, if you will. FDR's worst political enemy was Huey P. Long. Senator Huey P. Long, let's see if I can get that contrast a little bit better here. Folks here, people referred to him as the Kingfish. I didn't make it better, I made it worse. People referred to him as the Kingfish. He was the governor of Louisiana from 1928 to 1932, senator from Louisiana from 1932 to 1935, had aspirations to run for president. And presidential election 1936, he was practically a dictator. He attacked banks, oil companies, utilities in Louisiana. But on the other hand, he built roads, schools, hospitals. If you ever go to Baton Rouge, the Capitol building that you see as you pass through there on the interstate, that was constructed during the times of the Kingfish, Huey Pierce Long. Let's move on. His motto, every man a king. Every man a king. And some of the things he advocated was the Share Our Wealth program. Let's get this up here. The Share Our Wealth program. And I want you just to imagine this now, if I quit moving this around here. Just imagine this. The government will confiscate the surplus wealth of wealthy individuals in our country here. They still talk about it here, folks. We're still talking about taking the money from the wealthy here. I wish people would just get over that. And what Huey P. Long was advocating under the Share Our Wealth program, 100% confiscation of all incomes over $100,000. So if you made $1 million in that year, if you were a wealthy individual and made $1 million under the Share Our Wealth plan, then that individual would have $900,000 to be taken from them. And where's this money going to go? And this money would go to every unfortunate family in the United States, poverty level family in the United States, to provide every family a homestead, that's a house, worth $5,000 and an annual income of $2,500 a year, even if you didn't work. So where's this money going to come from? Look at the top here, folks. Share Our Wealth. It's going to come from the wealthy individuals. Every man a king. Every man a king. That's Huey P. Long. I did not show you likenesses here of the kingfish. If you read Robert Penn Warren's All the King's Men, that's the story of Huey P. Long, basically. Here he is right here. We see another likeness of him right here. And I think here's another likeness of him right over here. And another likeness here of the kingfish, Huey P. Long. A popular individual from Louisiana. Okay, so let's move on here, folks. And for Huey P. Long, they had aspirations to run for the presidency in 1936, but unfortunately in 1935, Huey P. Long was assassinated. Assassinated at the Capitol building in Baton Rouge. He was walking through the corridors there, and he was shot, not dead, shot by a young man. I think he was a doctor, I believe he was. His name was Carl Weiss. The bodyguards around Huey P. Long pumped 61 bullets into Carl Weiss, and of course killed the man there. Some historians today claim it was one of those stray bullets fired from one of the security guards there that actually hit Huey P. Long. He lingered for a couple of days here, folks, and his condition worsened, and he was begging the doctors, please don't let me die. I have so much to do. But Huey P. Long did pass away. Okay, so shall we move on here, folks? In 1935, FDR began his second New Deal, which basically was an open attack on corporate America and the wealthy. It's sometimes referred to as soak the rich. Soak the rich. If we use a word here, which is the Wealth Tax Act, which did take place. This placed an income tax on individuals at the highest level in the history of our country, highest peacetime level in the history of our country. In the highest income tax brackets here, my friends, it was 79%. 79%. So what does that mean? 79%. If you earn $1, how much is going to go to the federal government? Well, you can figure it out right there, folks. We're going to have 79%. 79 cents out of $1 will go to the government, and you will get 21 cents out of that dollar. That is incredible here, folks. Soak the rich. It took place. It took place here. Now, I want to share something with you, folks. And this is the way it is. This is the way it was a few years ago. And I did the research on this. And when you hear me talk about this all the time, about, let's tax the rich. Let's tax the rich. That's the first thing we're going to do here. Presidential candidates in the presidential election of 2020, not all but one of the presidential candidates immediately said, upon my election, we are going to raise taxes. We're going to raise taxes, particularly on the wealthy individual. But let's look at this now. And these are true numbers. It might vary just a tiny bit here, but this is from recent years. The top 1% income owners, the top 1% of the wealthiest individuals in the United States of America, pay 37% of the U.S. taxes. I'll say it again. The top 1% pay 37% of the U.S. taxes. The top 5% pay 57% of the U.S. taxes. The top 25% in our country pay 85% of the U.S. taxes. This means that 75% of the country pay only 15% of the U.S. taxes. But and some people don't even pay any taxes. Well, maybe they pay sales taxes, and in some states they want to eliminate sales taxes here. All right, so that means 75% of the country only pays 15% of the U.S. taxes. But still, what do some politicians say to this very day? raise taxes on the wealthy. And the wealthy, the top 25%, are paying 85% of the tax. I hope that sinks in on you good folks here. Enough is enough. All right. In 2017, this is unbelievable here, folks. My 97-year-old father in 2017 had not worked in 15 years. And my father paid $93,000 in income taxes. $93,000 for a 97-year-old man that hadn't worked in 12 years. And you try to tell me that that is right? That is not right here, folks. That is not right, and it upsets me to no end, to realize that. $93,000 is triple the amount of money for the average Alabama family. All right, so anyway, don't get me upset. Sounds like I'm already upset. All right, let's move on. In 1935, the National Labor Relations Act, often referred to as the Wagner Act, it passed. National Labor Relations Act established a National Labor Relations Board, and this would force companies to recognize and bargain with legitimate labor unions. You don't have a choice with this. Companies will have to recognize and bargain with legitimate labor unions. So with that in mind, I'm asking you good folks, what do you think is going to happen to union labor membership in this country? And you know what's going to happen to union membership. It is going to skyrocket. We'll have from 3 million that we had union laborers that you had in the 1920s, this number is going to jump it's going to almost triple here. And it will jump to 8 million individuals. 8 million individuals. All right, so new militant labor unions will form. The strike is often used to gain favorable work conditions, higher pay, reduced hours here for the American Federation of Labor, and that's the AFL, by the way, and they believed in the craft union. That if you were a skilled worker, you could be a part of the AFL. Other labor organizations here, such as the United Auto Workers Association, UAWA, felt like that their labor union should be strictly for just auto workers on the assembly line up in Detroit and elsewhere. We had others such as the United Steelworkers Association, USWA, United Steelworkers Association here. And they felt like all steel workers should be a part of this labor union. In other words, what I'm trying to say, you're not a part of AFL, you're part of a labor union that is strictly for steel workers, strictly for auto workers, or strictly for coal miners, All right, let's see who else we have here. Did I write that down? And I did not write that down. Okay, so I must have left that slide out, so I'll just continue here. We had an attempt, and I don't know what I did with that slide, so I'll just have to kind of wing this here, folks. We had an attempt here for the United Mine Workers Association under John L. Lewis to join with the AFL. But there was too much hostility with that, and that just did not work out. So what John L. Lewis ended up doing was forming another labor organization, which was called the Congress of Industrial Organization, the CIO. Next time we get together, I'll bring that slide out and show that to you. Here it is. I did write it down here. Didn't go down my slide far enough here. All right, so let's see. I think I covered all of that. So John L. Lewis here created the CIO. It was much more, shall we say, in tune with women laborers, with textile workers, with workers in a tobacco factories here. For John L. Lewis, he told his workers in the United Mine Workers Association here, the president wants you to join a union. The president wants you to join a union. And I'll share this photograph with you here, class here, showing a photograph here of Franklin Delano Roosevelt there in an open car, if you will. And he's talking to a member of the United Mine Workers Association here. And so you can see a close relationship here with the presidency and the presidency's administration with the New Deal and that of union labor. The president wants you to join a union. So under the Wagner Act, we will see that the union membership in our country increases dramatically. Now, if you're asking me today, how's union labor? You didn't ask me that, but if you would ask me that, how's union labor doing in the year 2020, 2021? Union labor is not doing very well now here, my friends. Last time I checked this, I think union membership across our country was 10.3% of the working force. It's at an all-time low. Will it bounce back? Who knows? We have no idea with this. Much depends upon the presidential administration that is present there. History has shown that union labor membership waxes and wanes. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it is low. Right now it is low. Will it go up? History has shown that it probably will, but I can't guarantee that anyway. All right, here, folks, this is a pretty good place for us to stop here. We're about halfway through this topic here of the New Deal. When we come back, we're going to finalize this with a New Deal, and we're going to go to the period of time between the wars, and we're on our way to another war, and of course that war is World War II. All right, thank you very much for your attendance.